Okay, so welcome to the What Brush Pen Is That session class. I'm going to start off by explaining what a brush pen is and also what a brush pen isn't. So a lot of times people are confused about brush pens, or they'll be asking me, please can I do a brush class with you, brush lettering class, and then they'll send me pictures of the pens that they've got, and they'll send pictures of pens like this, or various other pens. So that's why I thought I'm going to do this session, just to show you what is a brush pen, what isn't a brush pen, what the different kinds of brush pens look like, the different sizes, what's good for a beginner, what's not so good for a beginner, and so on. So the pens that I'm doing are ones that are available in South Africa. I know there's lots of different brands that are available around the world, but mine that I show, because I'm in South Africa, are going to be ones that you can get fairly easily here, either in a walk-in shop or online. So just to start off with what a brush pen is, it is a pen with a flexible nib. So if you look at, I've got a whole stack of different brush pens here, I'm going to demo them all now. If you look at a typical brush pen, this is a Tombow, it's a large Tombow pen. Tombow is a brand. So when you're buying brush pens, people often talk about my Tombows. There's different size Tombows. So for instance, that is a Tombow and this is a Tombow. You can see the nib size. The nib is that part from there up, and on this one, it's that tiny little black part at the end. So a Tombow is a kind of a generic name for a brush pen, but there's different sizes, and that's quite important, because when you're a beginner or you're wanting to do specific things with your brush pen, it's quite important to know which pens you need to get. So that is what a brush pen is. It has a flexible end. I'm going to show you just now how it works. It's got a nice bendy end, and that's what makes it nice for brush lettering. These pens over here are calligraphy markers. So I'm just taking the end off. This one has a flat end. You can actually see if I turn it like this, just hold it against the white. If I turn it like this, it's got a flat end. It's cut flat that way. This is a 4mm wide nib. So I use these when I'm teaching Gothic classes, Gothic calligraphy. This one is a narrow one. So you can see it's a little bit narrow, but it's got a hard end, and it's called a chisel nib. And if you think of a chisel, you know, if you're using it for carving, a chisel is a hard metal tool that you use for carving. So this nib, if you look at this, kind of has that same hard look to it. It's not flexible, and that's what makes it not suitable for brush lettering, is that it doesn't bend when you apply pressure. So that's not a brush pen. This is also not a brush pen. This is a Lamy fountain pen. Fountain pen is where you can refill the ink cartridge inside like that. So those are pens that I use for traditional calligraphy, not for brush lettering. And again, the reason is because it's got a hard metal end. It's not flexible. When you apply pressure, the nib doesn't bend and move like a brush pen would. Plus, it's flat on the end, so you're not going to get a brush lettered look. The last pen I want to show you that's not a brush pen. Oh, and fine liners obviously are also not brush pens because they are very pointy. But this pen here, this is an oblique pen, and this pen is used for dipping calligraphy, dipping ink. You dip in, you take it out, and you write. And as you write, the nib splits on the end. You can see there, it splits on the end, and that gives you a thick and a thin. So you can sort of get a brush lettered look with this pen, but it's not a brush pen. Okay, so those are all going to one side, because I'm not going to be demoing them. They are not suitable for brush lettering. So brush lettering is a style of writing where it has a sort of cursive look, and you are making up your letters out of pieces. So in order to do that, I'm just going to quickly demo for you what it looks like. And then, oh guys, I've left my tripod. Hold on one second. Yeah, I forgot to bring the tripod. I need that so I can show you how the pens work. Okay, so in order to do brush lettering, I'm going to work with a large nib pen, and the reason for that is that you can actually see what I'm doing nicely on camera. Okay, so just get that right. When you're doing brush lettering, the most important thing is that your nib can bend. Okay, so this is not a brush lettering class. I just want to show you how the pens work. So when you are writing with a brush pen, you're wanting to be able to get this sort of look. So it's a thin up, thick down. Okay. So in order to achieve that, your pen needs to be able to be flexible on the page. So if you're trying to use a hard nibbed pen like that, this pen over here that I showed you earlier that has a chisel end, that pen is not going to bend on the page. If I apply a lot of pressure, I'll eventually snap the end off, but it's not going to be flexible. So I can't get that kind of look. I'm only going to get this sort of look where if I'm doing traditional calligraphy, I would have that type of look. Okay, it's really nice for Gothic as well. This pen here is a flexible nib. So all of the brush pens I'm going to show you will behave in the same way. You apply pressure and the nib moves on the page. And then if you look at it from the side, it's got a sort of a flexible look to it. Okay. When I'm working with a very small brush pen, like one that's this size with a little tiny nib like this, it works in the same way. You're just going to get a much smaller size shape. So all of these brush strokes you would put together to make your letters, and you need it to be nice and flexible. So when you're doing a brush lettering, everything flows nicely. So if you're doing your letters, you're wanting it to kind of flow, and everything needs to be nice and soft. So that's why you need a nice brush point, nice flexible brush point. So I'm going to just go back to here, and I'm going to show you the brush pens that I've got, the examples that I've got. The ones that I'm showing you here are all black, and I'm going to demo them all just now, just very quickly, just to show you. So with brush pens, you can kind of split it up into sizes. There's small and there's large, and there are also medium pens in between. So it gets a little bit confusing because a FaberCastell, for instance, which is the FaberCastell black, this one's a black one, the Pitt Artist pen. This one has a sort of a medium size nib. So it's not quite as small as the little pens, but it's not a big pen like this Tombow pen. Okay, so there's a large pen. This is kind of a medium one. And then over here would be a small one like that. So you can see there's kind of a difference. There's not a lot of medium pens on the market. So FaberCastell is one of the few ones. There's Edding, there's a couple of other brands I'll go through just now. But for now, I'm going to work mostly with large pens and small pens. So when you're a beginner and you're wanting to learn brush lettering and you try and work with a pen that is this size, it's really, really difficult because what happens is the pen needs to write in a big size in order to work. And your hand is not used to writing in this giant size. So you find that you're trying to write with a pen that's too big for the size you're writing. And your hand's trying to make these shapes, these letters. And the pen is actually just, it's too big. So your letters end up very chunky and very bold, like dark looking, and it's not nice. And the whole thing just looks ugly and it's not a pleasant experience. So I've had a lot of people feeling like they've failed at brush lettering, and actually it's because they've got the wrong pens. So starting off with the little pens, the ones I'm going to show you are the small Tombow pens. So I'll explain those as I'm demoing them. The small Pentel one, so I'll just show you that, and I'll go through the small brands again just now, but these are the ones I'm going to show you. Small Pentel, the Pentel always has, it's a Pentel Touch pen, always has this old-fashioned looking lid. And then I'm going to show you the larger pens. I'm going to show you the Koi pen, which is this one. Quite easy to get. These ones you can buy in P&A, so they are fairly easy to find. The Staedtler ones. So Staedtler, the sets look like this. Also fairly easy to find. I think a lot of the P&As have these. It's quite a nice pen. It's not going to last you that long, but it is quite a cheap pen by comparison to the others. So if you're buying brush pens and you don't want to spend a lot of money, the Staedtler, it says on here Staedtler, and it's got a dual end. So it's a brush on the one end and a hard nib on the other. So that's quite a nice one. I'll show you that. I'm going to show you the Caron markers. So Caron markers are not, you're not easily going to find them in South Africa. If you follow people on Instagram and Facebook and so on, people who are doing lettering art, you will often see the Caron markers. They're really, really nice to work with, very juicy pens, so a lot of ink comes out. They do bleed quite easily on normal paper. So they are not always great to work with when you're a beginner and you've just sort of got cheap paper. You do need the right paper and it can get quite expensive. So I'm going to show you that one. And then I'm going to show you the big Tombow by comparison, and also the big FaberCastell. So this is the big Albrecht Dürer marker. It's a FaberCastell one, but it is a water-soluble marker. Okay, so it's got a really big, nice big nib as well. When I say water-soluble ink, you also get, so water-soluble is ink that you can move on the page. So you can blend nicely. You can put, you can write something out. You can blend colors onto it. You can paint with it. You can use a blender pen. There's lots of things you can do. The ink moves nicely on the page. When you're working with permanent ink, so the FaberCastell Fit Artist pen, for instance, that is permanent ink. These two little Tombows are permanent ink. So you can't blend with them. When you write with them, they're permanent. If you wet them, the ink will kind of, it'll smudge and it'll go a bit, like it'll bleed a little bit, but it's not like you can't paint with it. You can't blend with it. So there's water soluble ink, but there's permanent, and there's the like the proper water soluble where it moves around on the page. So all of these ones are water soluble and these ones aren't. You also get alcohol markers. So alcohol markers are using alcohol-based ink. I don't really work a lot with those because most of the time when I'm teaching brush letting, people are wanting to do blending, they're wanting to work with water and that, and so I use the water-soluble ones. The alcohol markers, these are Tombow ones, and the body is gray compared to this one, which is black. You also get the Copic alcohol ones, you get the chameleon markers. There's a lot of alcohol markers on the out there on the market, and they've been around a long time. The Tombow ones are fairly new. They are really nice to work with. You need to know how to work with the alcohol markers to use these. So if you're just buying brush pens and you only want to just do brush lettering, these will bleed through your paper. So if you write on normal paper, it's going to go straight through. So if you're doing artwork, these are really nice. But if you're just wanting to buy pens to start writing with and just sort of, just get into brush lettering, I would definitely suggest the smaller ones and maybe the small permanent Tombow ones. And then if you're wanting small color ones, the Pentel ones are really nice. Okay, so I'm going to just show you very quickly the sizes, and you'll see why the little ones are more suitable for a beginner. So when you're looking at sizes, the ones that I showed you up here, that big Tombow, that is quite a giant size pen and not that easy for a beginner to work with. When you're at the lines I'm working on here are grade 1 lines, so they are quite big, and I'm using them because it's easier for you to see on this recording. So when you look at the small pens, here are my small pens, and the two Tombow ones, there's a soft one and a hard one. The soft nib has a black barrel and some gold patterning on it. And the hard nib is navy blue barrel and a little silver block over there. So that's how you would tell the difference. They also, on the newer packaging, will even say if you go to where the barcode is, you go in line, then it says hard tip. And this is an older one. It doesn't say soft tip on it. So the newer packaging actually says in English hard tip and soft tip. I've been using these Tombows for a really long time, and when I first started using them, everything on here was in Japanese. And I think as they've become more popular around the world, they've put more and more English on here. So now they even say water-based pigment ink hard tip. So the navy blue ones are hard. Hard just means that when you apply pressure, you've got to press a little bit harder because the nib is harder. So it gives you a slightly different feel to the softer tip. Okay, so that's the hard one. And then the softer nib, you don't have to apply quite as much. It's got a softer, sort of swishier feel to it. You can also go bigger. The pen itself feels like it needs to move in a bigger space. So what I normally suggest to people is get both. Because if you're brand new to lettering, you are not going to know, and I won't know which pen you'll prefer. It comes down to feel. And I find that often people who grip very tightly and hold in a weird way, when I say weird, like a lot of people will hold their pens like this. This softer pen is easier to move around when you've got a compromised grip. So if you're very tight on your pen or you're gripping like this and you don't have a lot of flexibility, the softer nibs are definitely easier. Left-handed people sometimes find the softer nibs easier as well, because when you're doing brush lettering as a left-handed person, you're having to push the whole time. So if I'm doing a basic stroke like this one over here, and I go up and down, the pen is kind of moving in a nice direction. If I'm having to do it as a left-handed person, having to push up, and you can see I'm not left-handed, and over, there's my wobbly stroke. So the softer pens are sometimes easier because you're kind of just pushing up and over. So, you know, you need to try them. So these are 2 nice pens. They are about 60 Rand each. They're not expensive and they last a really, really long time. So I find that these pens, eventually the nib actually goes rounded on the end. They still have ink in them, but you literally wear the pen out before it runs out of ink. And that takes quite a long time. So very, very economical in that way. The other one that I really like as a small pen is the Pentel Touch Sign Pen. So it says touch on here. These are also Japanese. So the Tombow, these Tombow ones are Japanese. And the Pentel ones are Japanese. So the touch sign pen, when I first started brush lettering, I used to see these all over Instagram. And oh man, I'd see these little beautiful strokes and they were using these amazing little pens and we couldn't get them in South Africa. And it's really annoying because Pentel is a brand that has been around in South Africa for years, but the Pentel touch sign brush pens were not available. So I'll show you just now when I do the colors, I'll show you the packaging for this one. But these pens are amazing. They write beautifully. When you write with them, they have a lovely soft feel. The nib is quite soft to work with, but it's not swishy. It doesn't feel like it's going to just collapse on the page. You know, some of these pens, when they're quite soft, the nibs split very quickly. These ones don't. These last a really long time and are also 60 Rand. They're really, really economical. So those are my best choices for, or favorite choices for beginners, and they're small pens. If you have big pens and you're wanting to start brush lettering, it is a lot harder with the bigger pens. So here, there's my medium one. So FaberCastell will be, I'll show you just now, but it's in the medium category. And that one is kind of hard to use. I'll explain why in a moment. Big Tombow, Big Koi, Karen marker, and then I've got the large FaberCastell over here. Okay. The Stapler one is this one here. It is kind of in between. It actually also would be a sort of a medium size pen. So I'm going to put these bigger ones aside for now, and I'm just going to show you the medium size ones. So if you look at the nibs, the FaberCastell is much narrower, but this over here, where my nail is where the nib is starting on the Stapler one. So this is all plastic over here. So the nib lengths are actually the same. And why I say they're medium is because if you look at the Tombow one by comparison, the Tombow one starts over here. It's actually really big by comparison. So the Stapler and the FaberCastell are sort of in the medium category. Stapler is also quite nice to use if you're a beginner and you don't want to spend a lot of money on the pens. That's the one that looks like this set over here. So Stapler is another brand that's been in South Africa for ages, and we all kind of grew up with that. So this pen, quite nice to use. It's not going to last that long. The nib is not going to last as well. But if you look at this pen, it's works at about 20 Rand compared to 70 Rand for one of these. So if you're comparing, it is definitely a nice cheap option. And it comes in some lovely colors. So these pens would work kind of about that size. If you're looking, and just to compare it to that big Tombow. There's the big Tombow. You can actually see it is a sort of a medium size. Okay. The nice thing about the Stapler ones is they are water soluble, they mix. So you can do blending with them, you can color in with them. There's also some nice fun things you can do. They are dual ended, but the other end is not a brush pen, which is quite a pity because it's got a really nice small size. And you would think, oh, it looks like a brush pen, but actually it's a hard end. So if I go and apply pressure, it doesn't bend, nothing happens. It works like a Koki or marker, and it's not going to give you that nice, soft, flexible feel that you need for a brush pen. So it's only really the one end that you can use. So they are quite nice in that you can do normal drawing, you can do line drawing with them, and you can just do normal writing. So quite a useful pen. The FaberCastell Pit Artist pens, also really nice pens once you know how to use them. So I said earlier, they're not great for beginners because the nibs are quite, like they have a weird feel to them. You kind of need to get the hang of them, and beginners often find them a little bit difficult to control. So a lot of people have these pens and then they struggle with them. Once they've tried these small Tombow ones or the Pentel ones, and they've used them and they've got used to brush lettering, then what happens is these pens become easier to use because suddenly they know how to do brush lettering. Then this pen isn't such a difficult pen to use. But I do find for people who don't understand how to hold the pen for brush lettering will struggle more with these ones. So if you have them already, that's great. If you're a beginner, I wouldn't suggest buying these as your first pens. The tape on here is mine because they're workshop pens. So the B, by the way, if you look at the end of any FaberCastell, these are Pitt Artist pens. Okay, so the Pitt, it says Pitt Artist pen on the side there. If you look at the lid, it says B. If you look at the lid and it says F or S or C or anything that isn't a B, B is brush. So B means it's a brush end. C is for chisel. So the C on the end of it is going to give you a nib like this. So C on the FaberCastell is for chisel. The F is for fine. The M is for medium. So those are fine liner pens. So the letter on the pen actually tells you what you are buying. Okay, so that is FaberCastell. Those are the sort of medium size pens. Then when it comes to the large pens, I'm going to show you the Tombow. So this is the Tombow Dual. Tombow ABT. Over here it says ABT. The colors are done in numbers. So if you are wanting to buy these pens and you wanting, okay, N15 is N is for neutral. If you're looking at the color ones, the color ones will all have numbers. So it'll be 443 or 565 or whatever it is. They all have only the numbers on. The rest of the pens have colors on. So it is a little bit annoying because there's 108 of these in the range. So 108 pens when you're only working with numbers can get a little bit confusing. All of these other pens will have a name on them. They'll have a code, but they'll also have a name. So this one says black. The colors will have the color names on. This one here is a Karen marker. This one on the lid, it will say black over there. Also has a number, but it says black. And the Albrecht Dürer says black as well. So it is definitely more helpful when you're looking at the color names, especially because mostly women are doing brush lettering and we like our names, not our numbers. So with these Tombows, as I said before, the N is neutral. So the grays all have N numbers, and so does the blender. The colorless blender is also an N. So if you look at the size of these ones, quite big to work with. So here's my N that I was doing earlier. You've got to go really slowly with these pens. If you try and work fast, if I try and go fast like that, it flicks like that. You can see how thick it goes like this. You've got to work very slow. You also need a huge amount of space. So my hand over here needs to work in a much bigger area to get a size like that. Much harder than working with a little pen like this. Here's my small Tombow, and there's my same letter. Much, much easier. So that's why I'd recommend the small ones for beginners, simply because it's such a big size to work with. So that's my Tombow one. Just gonna leave it there so you can see the nib. The Koi one is, by comparison, is quite a lot cheaper. So if you look at the Tombow as being 70 Rand, this is about 30 to 35 Rand, depending where you buy it. The Koi, this is the Koi one, and the size, if you look at the nib size over there, kind of the same. The Koi one's slightly shorter, but they have a very, very similar feel when you write with them. So if I look at that as being my Tombow N and I do a Koi N over here, it might look slightly narrow. The Koi one is actually a brand new pen. My Tombow one isn't brand new, but you can see they're pretty much the same size. So nib size and feel are very similar. The reason why the Tombows are more expensive is they are a better quality pen. They do last longer. So I find that these Koi pens, they get destroyed a lot quicker. And when I say destroyed, the ends they're fray. So a brush pen is made up out of fibers. So it's a whole lot of fibers put together like this into a point, and the point is flexible. So as you're writing, the point is moving on the page. With a cheaper pen, those points break quickly and they fray, and they get very thick and fluffy on the end. And they become very difficult to work with. So you can see it's got a nice point over there. And then once they fray, the point goes nice and not nice, it goes horrible. It goes all thick on the end, and it makes it very hard to write with. So then moving on to the other pens, here is a Karen brush marker. So these two are Japanese. Koi is Japanese and the Tombow is Japanese. The Koi ones, just by the way, before I do the Karens, the Kois are made by Sakura. So if you have a look over here, it says Sakura color product, and it has a little picture of the cherry blossom, the Sakura flower. If you know the Pigma microns, okay, so this is a Pigma graphic, but Pigma make the fine liners. It's the same company. They also do the jelly roll gel pens. So if you see that little flower on there and it says Sakura, that's the company. This particular type of pen is the Koi coloring brush pen. So it is a really good pen. It's a nice brand, nice to use. I used to teach with these a lot, but they are really difficult for beginners simply because of the size. Okay, so then the Karen one. Karen is a Polish company, Polish brand, and they've become really, really big everywhere, all over the internet. A lot of people overseas are using them. They are just impossible to find in South Africa. So I've started selling them. There is someone else who sells them as well. And amazing pens. They are really nice to work with. Just if I can open it. There we go. And you can see how nice and big the nib size is. So just to compare it again to my other one, the other ones I've shown you, there's the nib size by comparison. Not recommended for beginners simply because of the size. Beautiful feel. Very, very nice pen to write with. They are quite juicy and inky, and they do tend to bleed. Some of them that I've worked with tend to bleed a bit on the paper, especially if you're using quite cheap paper. But you can see it's got a lovely look to it. Actually has a blacker look to it than the Koi one. I'm not sure if you can see that on the screen, but a really, really nice pen to work with. And the nib is nice and it's quite hard to work with. So if you look here, it's got a little bit of give, but it's not soft. I don't see this pen fraying quickly. Fraying is where the end breaks like that. So these pens are also probably in a similar price range. Actually, a little bit cheaper than the Tombows. So they're priced somewhere in between the Tombows and the Kois. Okay, then I'm going to show you the Albrecht Dürer marker. So this pen is not designed for this kind of paper. This is cheap schoolbook paper. These Albrecht Dürers are actually marketed as watercolor markers. It says there on the side. They are amazing. I've got the colors. I'll show you the colors just now. But the pens themselves are beautiful to work with. Size-wise, they are quite big. So if you compare again to my Tombow, it's got a much wider nib. It's a little bit shorter, but it's a wider nib. So when you write with this pen, I'm going to not do it there. It needs a nice big size. These pens are amazing. So it's got, you can see if I do that, it's got, I'm not sure if you saw it, okay, it absorbs very quickly. I'll show you on some proper paper just now, but I'm going to do a nice big letter. Look how giant that letter is. So you can go really, really thick. If you look at the stripe, you can go beautiful and thick. Here is my Tombow one by comparison. It's much thinner. So these pens, you can get a beautiful fat stroke with them. And very, very nice to write with and great to use if you're wanting big lettering and you're writing on really nice quality paper, like a nice smooth paper. So paper is quite important for your markers, and I'm not going to discuss paper too much here. We'll show you some pads just now, but there are separate workshops that I've done on paper, but just know that you need to have the correct paper. I can actually feel this has gone like this because it's such wet ink. It's actually wet my paper, and you can see here it's bleeding right through or ghosting right through. So is the Karen. So if I just show you the back of this page, remember I said this is schoolbook paper, so it is thin. There is my Karen marker. Okay, so the Karen marker was this one here. Remember I said it's a really juicy inky pen. That's the Karen marker there. You can see how it's showing right through the page. That's the Tombow over there. And here is the Koi. Those ones don't really come through. So they're quite nice to use on normal paper. Over here is the Albrecht Dürer, the big FaberCastell, and there's the Karen marker. So these pens are much juicier and inkier. They're great for doing artwork with. In fact, we just had a brush marker art workshop where we're doing painting with markers. And these pens are the most amazing ones to work with. And you can actually see how juicy they are. Okay, so, and they've bled through as well. So just doing this over. So those are the pens that I wanted to show you that are quite nice to use. I am also just going to show you, and I'll move this back. I'm going to show you the pens that are not great for beginners. I'm not saying they're not good pens. They're just not really that good for beginners, okay? When I first started doing brush lettering, probably about 4 years ago, Typo had brush pens. And the Typo brush pens at the time, there were 5 in a box and they were like this. I have never seen them since. I know Typo do a lot of brush pens. I'm nervous of buying brush pens from Typo because they're not a specialized stationery company, and a lot of times their pens don't last and the nibs don't last. So if you're looking at a brush pen like this, these were pens that I learned on. So I didn't know anything about brush lettering. I decided I want to learn. I was teaching traditional calligraphy, so with those, with the like the fountain pen that I showed you. So I thought, brush lettering, how hard can it possibly be? It's hard, and it's hard because if you don't have the right pen, it's impossible to do anything. These pens, look how pointy that nib is. I don't know if you can see there. It's very, very pointy. There's my finger for comparison. Quite a small nib. And these are the pens that I tried to work with. Very fine, very soft. You need a huge amount of control. You have to know what you're doing to use these pens. And obviously I didn't, because I was teaching myself. Because there's no one teaching it in, certainly not in Joburg. I don't know about in South Africa, but at the time I was the only person wanting to teach it, and I had to learn. And these pens, sure, they nearly killed me because I just couldn't get it right. Only when I got hold of these small hard Tombows, eventually I found somewhere that was selling them. They were not easy to find in South Africa. They've since become much easier because, you know, I have an agent who sells them. And these pens changed my lettering. They actually they gave me the ability to write. So whereas with the cheap pens, it was very hard. So cheapy pens, not saying the type ones are bad. They're just not easy for beginners. And some of them are not that cheap. So, and you also will find all sorts of different brands on the market. If you compare, if you're wanting to know if a pen is a good quality or not, look at the price. So price-wise, you can kind of get an idea if a pen is going to be good or not. I'll discuss that now as well. Just with the brush pens that are not great for beginners. I don't have one here, but Pigma, this is the Pigma brand. Remember I said earlier they've got that little flower on there. They are doing the, this is a Pigma graphic, which is just a hard nib. This one doesn't bend, but they also do a Pigma brush. A lot of people have bought these pens. It looks exactly like this. Same color, the beige color with the red and the black writing. And it has a brush point. It's also similar to this Typo one, where it's quite narrow, quite fine, very, very flexible, and very hard to use. I know how to write, and I can teach anyone to write, but those pens, very difficult. I struggle to write with them. I find you've got to have an extremely light hand, and you really need to concentrate because of the amount of control needed. And I just find it's not pleasant. So the whole time you're writing with them, you're feeling like you're not, your letters are, it's not easy to write. I don't think they were designed for writing. They're actually more like art pens, where you're wanting to get a sort of a brush feel, like as if you're working with a paintbrush, but you're wanting it in a disposable, easy to use pen. So I feel like they're designed more for drawing and for artwork than for writing, but people buy them for writing because they are fairly easy to find. You get them in different colors and they're not that cheap, and then they're very dark. So it's just stressful when you have pens that you can't use. The other ones I found very difficult to use, and I find them difficult, so a beginner will definitely struggle with those, are the Copic ones. So these are Copic multi-liner pens. They have a nib like this, very similar looking to the Typo one and also to the Pigma one, and very, very soft, very flexible, and quite difficult to write with. So these are all brush pens. A brush pen doesn't, just because it says brush pen on it or is a brush pen, doesn't mean it's for brush lettering. It's meant also for drawing. So it could be for adding, wanting like a nice sort of brush stroke look. These pens are great, but they are very hard to write with. These are the metal ones, so they're refillable. You also get Copic. This is a brush pen, brush medium. It's got quite a thick, chunky nib. Quite nice to write with, but I found that it frays very, very quickly. They don't last that long. So also, I wouldn't suggest it for beginners. Okay, so that is my pen comparison. I'm now going to, I made a list of everything I need to tell you. There's so much, and I'm going to forget some of it. So I just want to check what I had on here. Okay, so price-wise, just as I have mentioned, price-wise, 70 Rand. So I'm talking in Rand. So if you're watching and you're from another country, you can kind of work it out. This would be 70 Rand. This is about 35, so half the price. So whatever you would pay for a Tombow, the koi is about half the price. The stateless, so if you're looking 20 Rand, 70 Rand, 35, stateless are about 20 Rand by comparison. So very nice and cheap. When you buy a set like this, you're spending about 200 Rand on a set. I've taken the black out the top. This has got 12 colors. So value for money, these are really, really nice to buy. The Lyra ones are also not too bad. I just want to find my Lyra here. I have Lyras. They are quite similar to the Tombows in feel. Okay, so that's the big Tombow. The Lyras have a very similar feel. You buy them in sets. You can't buy them individually, but in sets they work out also to about 16 to 20 Rand per pen. So they don't come in nice colors. You get them in reds and blues and greens and yellows, but there's no pinks, there's no purples. I don't know why, but that's how it is. So nice pens to practice with. You are not going to get pretty ones, but if someone gives you a set of these pens, they're great to practice with. They're also water soluble, so you can color in with them, which is, I mean, you can do blending, you can do water, like watercolor effects, so quite nice for that. So price wise, I'm just going to hold these up in order. So that's the Tombow, the Koi. So if that's 70 Rand and a Lyra is about 20 Rand, State is about 20 Rand, I mean, that's like quite a big difference. The little pens, you are looking at 60 Rand each approximately. So there's the big, the little Tombow over there and the little Pentel. That's what I sell them for. You are probably not going to find the Pentels anywhere else in South Africa, but that's what they cost. These ones range between 60 and about 65 Rand, depending on where you buy them. Very, very good value for money, all of those small ones. These Karen markers are about 50 something Rand, I think. So also not too bad at all. They would kind of go in here next to the Tombow. And the FaberCastells, I think, are about 60 Rand a pen. So they're also kind of sitting around about there. So just by comparison, we're sort of going down the line there. The Albrecht Duras that are really, really big, you buy them in sets. I don't think there's anywhere in South Africa that sells them individually. I know overseas you can buy them individually, but they work out about 70 Rand a pen, which is not bad considering how much ink is in there and just how amazing they are. So really, really nice pens. Not for everyday writing because they're just so big. If you're wanting pens for everyday writing, small size, I would go with any of these ones that I keep mentioning. They're going to pop up a lot here. So just leave them on the screen. They are great. For everyday writing, Tombows are the big sizes. Tombows are quite nice. The FaberCastells, once you get the hang of them, oh, it's here in my hand. They're quite nice as well. Karens are really nice, but as you saw, they bleed a lot. So it depends what paper you work on. So I would say maybe not for everyday use. The Kois are quite nice. They don't last that long. So if you buy them, be prepared to buy quite a lot. That's why these are more expensive, but they last longer. Lyra is great. If you've bought a set of these, or often they'll be on special, like I've seen them on Take a Lot for special. P&As always have them. Lots of the art shops have them. So Lyra as a set of pens, if you're just wanting to practice, or you've got kids that are wanting to get into brush lettering and you don't want to spend a ton of money on pens, these ones are quite nice to buy, and the Koi ones as well. These staplers as well. So I'll keep mentioning these. They are really, really nice for the price. They're also, like I said before, it's about 200, something like that for this whole set, which is actually really good. The pens that are not so good to use, if you have them already and you're struggling with them, put them aside, get yourself a couple of these ones, any of these ones, and try those first. Then go back to the pens that you're struggling with. You will find it easier. Those typo ones that I showed you just now, these ones here, the ones that I bought ages ago, it was probably about 3-4 years ago that I bought these. And I really struggled. And then when I found these pens, like, oh, these are the best pens in the world. That's all I'm using. Then I started finding other pens. Eventually, I went back to these. I found them in a drawer. I was like, oh, let me try them. Much, much easier. Suddenly, I could write with these because I'd learned on these ones. So my difficult to use pens, I didn't chuck them away or give them away. I just put them aside. And when I knew what I was doing, I picked these up again and they were much easier to work with. So often it's not you, it's the pen or the incorrect pen that's causing you not to be able to write nicely. Okay, so I'm going to just tidy up a bit. And then I want to show you some of the colors in that and some other pens. So when it comes to the buying the pens. Like now you decide, okay, I'm going to do some brush lettering, I've committed to it, and I'm going to get some pens. Or you've got these ones already and you've done the basic courses and you know how to write. Now you're bored with them and you want some colors. So now if you need to decide what pens to get, it kind of comes down to price and quality. Those are sort of the two things that I would look at, and also what are you going to do with the pens. So if you are looking at pens and you like the little ones, you want to stay with the small pens, and you think, okay, I'll move on to the big pens at another stage. Small pens, I've got some options here to show you. So for instance, with the little Tombows, okay, very small. Remember I said the navy blue is the very, very tiny one. That one comes in color. So that's the very small, hard one. Then you get the one with the gold on here and the black. That's the slightly softer one. You don't get colors in this one, only in the small, hard one. So the colors, if you look at them here, I've got a whole stack. You do buy them in sets as well. These colors are, they look really nice. If you look at the plastic lids, they look nice and bright, but they're actually quite muted. So when you use them, they're actually, if I say dull, it sounds kind of rude, like it might sound like, oh no, they're horrible. It's muted. So if you look at the pink, for instance, it's got a sort of muted, dusty looking pink versus the Pentel pink, which is really, really bright. So the colors are, when you see all the lids, the plastic looks really, really nice and bright, but they're actually quite, they're not the same, and a lot of people are very disappointed by that. So I just want to mention that although they're amazing to write with and they look great, and when you write with them, they look great. But if you're wanting bright, vibrant colors, these are going to disappoint you. So I'm not going to demo these here because I'll be all day demoing all the colors, but I've just put them all together in a band here just to show you. I am missing the gray one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 10 in the set. So if you go and buy a set of 10, I don't sell them in sets, I sell them individually. If you look at the set, there's a small black one in the set, and then there are 9 colors. So I've got 8 of the colors here. I'm just missing the gray one. I've sold out of the gray. So there's a dark blue, a red, a purple, pink, orange, yellow, brown, and the green. So they're lovely to write with. And on the right paper, they are quite nice. They tend to go very dull if you're working on cheap paper. So if you're just wanting to practice with pens and you like the idea of these pens, these colors are great. If you're wanting to do more of like an arty effect and you're wanting to blend with the pens and you're wanting water-soluble ink and blending and all of that kind of thing, these pens are permanent. They're not going to give you that very saturated ink that you can play around with. However, if you go and write with a Pentel, so here's a pink version of the black one that I showed you. So I love these pens, great to write with. This is a pen that's going to bleed through your paper. So if you're into journaling and you're doing bullet journaling, that kind of thing, these pens are going to go right through a lot of the papers that are, not all of them, but a lot of the papers that are available in journals. Then I would rather suggest you go with the Tombow ones. The Tombow ones will give you the colors. They're just not going to bleed through your page. If you write with this and you write with one of these, you're just going to see straight away the Pentel ink kind of, it saturates the page. Whereas these pens are much nicer to work with in journal. So then I would go with these. They also come in neon colors. Just take them out here. So they have neon colors as well. So there's a reddy orangey color, kind of like the highlighters. When you buy highlighters, similar ink colors. So pink, the pink's really pretty. It's like this sort of candy floss pink. There's a neon yellow, a blue, and a green. So those are also really, really nice. All the same size as the little nib, not the softer, slightly softer one. So small pens, they're all the same price as the black ones. They're all about $60 each, and you can buy them in sets as well. The small Pentels, these little ones that I was showing you earlier, you can also get them in sets of 12. So a set of 12 colors, you can buy them like this, which has these colors. So it's all the sort of bright colors. There is a black, there's purple, yellow, red, sky blue, gray, brown, and so on. It's like it goes through all the sort of normal colors that you would want. Then what they did is they brought out some extra colors. So the set that I've got here, it has beautiful colors. It has a berry, like a berry pink color. It's got an olive green, a teal, navy blue, pale pink, light gray. So I always feel like Pentel thought, we have all these bright colors, but we don't have like soft muted colors. We don't have a nice soft pink. We don't have a soft gray. We only have this one very bright kind of green. So they brought out this range, which feels to me like it complements this really well. And you can also buy, so that's 12 and there's 6. You can buy them as a set of 18 colors. So when you see these 18 colors together, that's when your heart starts beating fast. And you see these like, oh, angels sing, music start. They're amazing. They're beautiful. The colors look lovely together. And the packaging is really nice because it looks like a sort of a rainbow going across here. Stunning, stunning pens to write with. And they're right, obviously the same as this black one that I was showing you earlier. Really nice pens to work with, but very, very juicy. So again, for some people it doesn't matter because they're just practicing their writing. If journaling is your thing and the bleeding and the ghosting when you turn the page over is going to be a thing, these pens are not suitable for journaling unless your paper is very thick. I'm just talking about sort of an average journal. I've tested them in typo journals where the paper is thickish, but it's not super thick, and the Pentels kind of just go right through. If you do want to use the Pentel, say you're doing your landing page, or you're writing, if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you're doing journaling, and now we're coming in for August, and you write like August nice and big, stick your pages together, do 2 pages together, and then that bleed won't be an issue because you won't see it. Or write on another piece of paper and stick that into your journal because it's going to be very irritating if you turn the page and then you see the word showing right through. So these pens will do that. If you are doing blending, and blending is where you are using a blender pen, which I have here. So a blender pen is a pen with a see-through lid and a white nib. The barrel's color is dependent on the manufacturer. So when I talk about blending, and I'm talking about these pens, you can use the ink that's in here to blend with. So you pick it up. I do have a whole workshop on that if you're wanting to learn how to do blending. It is beautiful. Such fun to work with. You can do pictures, you can do words. And these water-soluble pens, these ones and the bigger ones are great for that. That is where the small Tombows are, the ink is not water-soluble. So these are really nice for writing, but you can't really do much artwork with them. If you are looking at a blender pen, this blender pen is a koi one. It's a big one. So that nib size is quite big, but the blender pen can be used with any smaller pen or bigger pen. It doesn't really matter. The ink is what you're blending. So if you have one koi blender, but you've got a few of these small pens, for instance, you can use the same blender pen. So a blender pen means colorless ink, and it picks up other ink, it blends the colors, and it creates a nice picture on your page with your different ink shades. So you can use the same blender pen for most of the colors that I've shown you, most of the pens I've shown you here, except for the permanent ones. Okay, so I'll show you more about the blender pen now when I get onto the quiz. The last small pen that I want to show you, I didn't show you when I was doing the black ones, is because I can't really get these anymore, and I used to sell quite a lot of them. They're really nice pens, but they're quite hard to find sometimes. It's the Kelly Creates. So Kelly Creates, it actually says on the side there, Kelly Creates. Again, that's tape that I've put on. Kelly Creates. So Kelly is an actual person. She's a lady in Canada, and she's a brush lettering artist. She also does watercolor. She's a watercoloring artist as well. And she has a whole range of pens. So she's got big pens, small pens. She's got metallic pens, white brush pens. She does all sorts of pens. These small Kelly Creates pens, they are very, very similar in the feel to these Pentel pens. So when you look at the nib, I've only got dark ones here. The nib is quite small as well, and it's got a similar sort of look. It looks a little bit tinier than the Pentel one, but it has a similar feel to it when you write with it. Very nice pen. You can also blend with these ones. They're just really hard to find now in South Africa. So that's those. Then when it comes to the little pens, here's one. The last one that I want to show you, so I almost forgot these, is the Zebra Fonwari pens. Oh, just grab mine. Sorry, I forgot to pull those out. So Zebra Fonwari, here's a pack of the pens. So that's them in their pack. And when you look at these pens, I actually break the packs up and sell them individually, but you normally would only buy them in sets. So if you look at the zebra pens, you've got different colors, and the nibs are also really small. So very, very nice and fine. They write fairly similarly to the very small hard nib Tombow. Okay, so so size-wise is my hand just covered in ink. By comparison, you can see the nib sizes. This little pink one is quite small, has a very nice feel to it. So I find that people who quite like the very small, hard Tombow like these. The ones who like the slightly bigger, softer pen, like this Pentel one, they prefer the Pentel. They're not crazy about the zebras. So the zebras have a similar feel. The zebra Fonwaris have a similar feel to the small Tombow pen. So very, very nice pen to write with, but quite a sort of small hard nib. So again, it depends on your preference. But if you have a very quite a tight hand and you feel that you need your pen to be softer and flow a little bit more, these are a little bit harder to use. But very nice pens. Also quite hard to find. So Zebra, they make the Zebra mild liners. So those of you that know the mild liners, that is the logo, or their writing at the bottom, and they'll often have a zebra on their packaging. So the mild liners, and then they make dipping pen, they make nibs. So when I showed you this pen over here, this nib, this is actually a zebra nib in here. So they make various different writing products, but these pens are really nice, and they're also about 60 Rand a pen. They're cheaper. All of these are cheaper when you buy them by the pack, but they last pretty well, and certainly for beginners, they are really, really nice, nice pens to get. Okay, so that's all the small pens. Then I'm going to show you the, just quickly, the FaberCastell. I did show you the black one earlier. I demoed that one. But just to show you, for instance, you'll buy a set like this. There are some places that will sell them individually, but most of the time you're buying them in sets. So when you pull them out, a set like this, for instance, will say 6-pit artist pens, hand lettering set. So FaberCastell do a lot of sets, and what that means is they've included a couple of brush pens, and they will include some fine liner. So these sets are quite nice to buy. I did mention earlier, they're not great for beginners for writing. So do a class with when you can buy these. You'll find once you know what you're doing with brush pens, these become very easy to use. The colors are great. This happens to be just one of the sets. It's got sort of quite pastel colors, almost like sherbet, like ice cream colors. I have other sets. I've got a whole bunch of different FaberCastell says they send me a whole lot of pens to try. Their pens are beautiful. They blend beautifully. They blend differently to this water-soluble ink. So I have quite a few videos on YouTube. If you do want to see how these blend, I've got a couple of videos. Just go through the description until you find FaberCastell blending, and you'll see how these pens work. But what I was saying about the lettering sets is they will include, so these four, for instance, have a B on the end. These are the brush pens. And then they will give you some fine liner. So here I've got a fine liner in this green color, the cobalt green, and one in the black. So it says S on the end. The fine liners in FaberCastell, where it's S, it'll also sometimes say 0.3. They didn't used to say that on the packaging. It's a new thing. A 0.3 is a really nice size to work with. So a set like this gives you quite nice options. You can color with these pens. You can do fake lettering with your fine liners, and then you can color them in with the brush pens. So quite nice options. I do just find that a lot of people buy the FaberCastell pens because they're easy to find in South Africa, and then they struggle to write with them. So, so that's my only issue with those pens, is that they're not great for absolute beginners. Okay, so that is the FaberCastells, and I've shown you the Pentels. Go try work at what I haven't shown you yet. So in terms of the medium pens, I showed you the FaberCastell. There are also the Edding pens I mentioned as well. I don't have those. There are some pens here that I forgot to show you because they were buried under some other pens. Artline sticks. So Artline sticks are pens that, again, you can't just buy them anywhere in South Africa. I used to sell them. I stopped selling them because I couldn't get hold of them. These look like Lego, and they actually fit together. They're amazing pens. They fit together, and they're Japanese. So Artline is also a brand that in South Africa we grew up with. And you would think that they'd be easy to find, but again, they've decided we don't need them here, kind of like the Pentel. So when I have got sets like this from overseas, they always sell very quickly. The lids, they stick together. They're like Lego. The lids actually stick as well. So if you take your lid off and you can stick it on the side. So they're amazing to play with. Kids love them. They actually are kids' pens. That's what they marketed as. But because they're kids' coloring pens. So kids will buy them. You can stick the lid on like this. They stick together. If I keep going, they actually fit into a circle. So you fit them in. You can see the triangular shape. They are very much like a medium pen size. So I didn't put them in with my demo pens just now because they're almost impossible to get hold of. But if you do see these and you are able to get hold of them, they're great pens to write with. They're really, really nice. The colors are great. I've only got a few left of my ones that I had. And actually, I got mine because my oldest son lives overseas and he came to visit a couple of years ago and I asked him to bring some. But I have tried to get them. You can buy them on Amazon, but often they're really expensive to get in South Africa because of the shipping. The pens themselves are quite cheap. It's the shipping that makes me sensitive. But if you're overseas or you know someone overseas and they can get those for you, brilliant pens and really nice for kids for coloring as well. Okay, then so that was just those ones. Then I'm going to show you the Tombow ones, the color ones. So with Tombow, they of course have got 108 colors in the range. It's just to make you crazy, I think, because of course you have to have all 108 colors. So I have a couple of them here, and the colors are amazing. This is the color wheel. Okay, so this is all the colors. So this is one that I made when I did have all the different colors. And because I sell them all, I don't always have every single color. So the 108, that includes the ones in the middle, which are the grays, the black, there's a lamp black, and then there's also the blender. So this blender has a black body. Do you remember I said to you the koi one has a white body? But look at this, they both have clear lids and they both have white ends. So it's colorless ink in these blenders. They don't have any color. And they behave like a brush pen. So when you pick up the ink, the colorless ink in here mixes with your, so say you're using this color, it would mix with the color in there and it dilutes it a bit and it gives you a beautiful soft blendable ink. Okay, so that's the big Tombows. They also have a dual end. So they have a marker, like a bullet marker end. And people often say, well, what's the point of this? What do you do with it? So these are nice for normal writing. So if you're wanting to add like just some normal writing into you're doing a lettering piece and you want to add some writing, or you want to do a little drawing, or you want to outline, like you want to use like edge your letters or something, these are really nice to use for that. I've got a video on how to actually use these. The colors that are on here are amazing. So if you look at this color wheel, I have a blank one like this on my website if you want to download. If you do start collecting these colors, I'm just warning you, these are highly addictive. Rather don't start collecting them because yeah, that's the end of having any money. So the colors kind of work here with the light, the cool colors going all the way through around to the warmer colors over here. So there's definitely some method there. And I have to just show you this because it's heartbreaking. This is the set. There's all the colors. I am missing a couple. This is out of my shop. And I use this to keep all the colors. So I just want to show you how this works. It's amazing. So this little kit, when you buy it, it's a set. It has that lid, but it actually folds out like this. So when you're doing your writing or your coloring, because these are great for artwork as well. You can see the ones I'm missing. That set folds out, or the box folds out like that. And then you can use it. When you're finished, you fold it back up. And you pop the lid on, make sure it's clicked, and then you can pick it up and you can take it with you. So that set, that little case is really nice. I sell the cases on their own as well, and you can put other pens in there. So you can have a couple of Tombows, you can put all your other pens in there, and that little case, that cover goes over and it's nice and portable. So it keeps the dust off your pens as well. So those are really, really nice. So those big Tombows, when you're working with those, the colors are also amazing. And they're reliable. You know, when you buy a Tombow, it's going to be the same. If you're buying this color and then you replace it in 10 years time, the color ink will be the same. They're just very, very good quality pens. The Koi ones are also reliable in terms of their color, the way they work. They're pretty much what you see is what you get. They are just not quite as durable on the tip as the Tombow. Also, some people like the size of these ones. When you're writing with these, it has a really nice size and a weight in your hand. It's not a heavy pen, but it has a really nice weight to it. The Koi ones are much smaller. So it's a smaller pen. It kind of just has a different feel to it. So it's really a personal choice. I find of my students, I have people who, like I have the Tombow people, and then I have people who just buy whatever else is available. So with Tombows, people tend to be quite brand loyal. The Koi pens, the big issue with those is that you can't buy all the colors individually. So those Tombow pens, you can buy that whole set. I did that, and that's the way I sell them. So when I go to a workshop, I take them with me, and that's like a display case. Every single one of those pens is available as an individual pen. You can buy them all separately. With the Koi pens, only about 15 of the colors, including the blender, are available individually. For the rest, if you want, and they've also got, I think, like 96 colors or 98 colors. They have a lot of colors in their range, but you have to buy them in sets. So you cannot go and buy, you know, if there's a certain green you like or certain blue, you can't buy that on its own. Certainly not in South Africa. I don't know about overseas, but you buy sets of 12, I'm talking about the Kois now, set of 12, set of 24, 48, and you can buy all of them together. It's 2 packs of 48 joined together. It's insane. And those are, they get quite expensive. So, you know, when you're buying like that, the pens themselves are not expensive, but it's just if you want all the colors. So if you're into coloring and you're into artwork, then it's quite nice to have all the colors. If you're just writing, then the colors that are available loose are, they're usually good enough. Then with these Tombow ones, you do get sets. So I don't sell them as sets simply because I find that the students that I have like to build up their own sets. But you can buy Tombow lettering sets where they've put together pens. So you might get a pen that, like, you know, 3 or 4 of these pens. There'll be one of the little brush pens, little hardener brush pens, maybe a fine liner and a couple of other things. So you can buy them as complete sets, like a ready-to-go lettering set, which is quite nice. And you can also buy packs of, I think it's packs of 10 of these pens where they've put together the brights or the primaries or the neutrals or the grays or whatever it is. So you can buy them like that as well. So a lot of places that do sell them in their sets. If you want to know where to buy pens that either I don't have or like the sets that I don't sell, then just message me and I can let you know. But I find that the kind of people that that are doing workshops with me quite like to buy them individually. So it's the only reason I don't sell the sets. Okay, so then just moving on. So I've shown you all of those. Moving on to actually I haven't missed anything. These big pens over here. Okay, so the big pens, there's the Ecolines, there are the Albrecht Durers, and I'm going to just show you those on the, I'll just flip this around. Oh yeah, I need to show you the metallics. That's the last thing I want to show you. So the metallic pens are really nice. It's like heart stoppers. Oops. I've got so many cables here as well, so I've just kicked my laptop cable, which is not a good idea. All right, so I'm going to show you the Ecolines, but I'm not going to show you on normal paper. This paper, this white paper that I use is schoolbook paper. It's just cheapy paper. I'm going to show you on Bristol paper. So Bristol is a white paper. So I said earlier, I'm not going to do a lot about paper, but I'm just going to show you this quick. When you are doing brush lettering and you are just doing normal practicing and you've bought yourself those Tombow, these ones here, these little pens, normal schoolbook paper or exam pad paper, notebook paper, any of that type of sort of cheapish paper is perfect because these pens, you know, it's not great for the pens, but you're not going to kill them easily on that paper. They are pretty durable. Whereas if you are working with these pens, like the bigger pens, now you've gone and spent some money, you've bought all these nice colors, you've got the beautiful big pens, you've got these wet, juicy pens. The schoolbook paper is not going to work. These Tombows will die quickly on rough paper. What happens is those nibs, you saw how big the nibs are. The fibers are long, and every time you're working with them over rough paper, you're fraying them. So the fibers eventually get rough, and it's kind of like mopping over very rough, a rough floor or over tar or something. You're going to fray that mop quickly, and it's going to go into pieces. So that's why it's not a good idea to use cheap paper for your pens. So if you are wanting, or for your nice pens, if you are wanting nice paper to write on, thin paper, marker paper is quite good. It's very, very smooth. It's a coated paper, so it doesn't bleed easily. So if you're working with the very juicy pens, that's good paper. Then the paper I'm going to demo on is Canson, which looks like this in a pad. You buy it in a pad, and it's Canson Bristol. So Canson is a brand. So Canson make the marker paper I just showed you, and they make this one. If you open up this this pad, and you feel, I know it's Zoom, so you can't feel. Trust me, it's lovely and smooth. Your pens glide. It's like mopping over a marble floor versus mopping over rough tar. So that paper is what I'm going to show you now. And then there's another paper that I will be getting in soon. I'm just waiting for it to arrive in South Africa. And hopefully by end of August, it'll be here. It's called Rhodia. So there's a pad. This is the white pad. You get it in an orange and a black pad. You get different colors, but this is a white, happens to be a white cover. And Rhodia paper is really, really smooth. So if you see in a couple of weeks' time or months' time, I'm advertising Rhodia paper as being like the best paper ever on Instagram, this is the reason. If you feel that it's super smooth, your pens glide, the colors are nice and bright, the inks sit beautifully on the top. So when you're practicing, this is just paper. Looks like a normal exam pad. It's double-sided paper. You can write on both sides of this paper. And it is amazing. So if you're wanting to practice with your bigger, more expensive pens, get paper like this. It's worth it because you spend a lot of money on the pens. And if you write with them on printer paper or normal schoolbook paper, it just damages them quickly. Plus, it's very absorptive. So it sucks the ink out of them really quickly. Whereas all these smooth papers, the ink doesn't run out as quickly because the ink is not sucking into the paper so quickly. Okay, so I've got small pieces that I've cut. So I'm just going to show you with these bigger pens and these bigger, juicier pens. Just move this around. Sorry for all the backwards and forwards of the camera, but it's the only way I can do this. So if I write with one of these bigger pens, I've got the Eco lines here. I just happen to have these colors. They come in, I think it goes up to about 30 colors for these. The Albrecht Dürers also you get up to 30. I do have the set of 20 and I don't have it with me, but I've got a set of 10. So the Albrecht Dürers, this is how it looks. And it says Albrecht Dürer watercolor. Albrecht Dürer was an artist. Watercolor markers. And when you open up the box, these pens, I mean, just look at these colors. They look amazing. So I've taken the black one out. I had the black one when I showed you the black pens. So a set of 10 is actually going to give you a really nice, oops, there goes my Eco lines. A set of 10 will give you, I'll just move that out so you can see, it will give you a really nice starting point if you're wanting to just mix your colors. They're beautiful to write with. And they last quite long as well, and they're very pigmented. So when you write with them, they are like the colors are really, really deep. Okay, so I'm going to show you the Eco line. So if I've got a ring light here, so I'm going to just hold it up, Nana, to show you the ink because it doesn't dry very quickly. It's really, really wet. On this paper, this is the Bristol card. So it's not very, very thick. It's about a 180 gram, but it's very smooth. So the ink sits nicely. So if I write with this and I do that, I'll just do an H on here. You can actually see there, you can see the light reflecting. Okay, so that ink is wet on the paper. If I go and touch it now, it's just going to smudge. So this pen, when you write with it, it gives you this ombre effect. So the ombre meaning it's going from dark to light or light to dark, whichever way you look at it, and it's starting to dry. It's still wet up at the top. You can see it's reflecting. So that's the Eco line. This has got proper ink in it. The Eco line pens, Eco line actually do calligraphy ink. And this has got really, really nice ink in it. If I write with the Albrecht Dürer, I've got a blue one here. And this has a bullet end. Okay, so that is the one advantage over the Eco line. Eco line is just a single-ended pen. The FaberCastell has a bullet end on this side. So it's just a normal pen, kind of like writing with a normal marker or whiteboard marker. Quite nice for if you're wanting to do artwork and draw things and then paint with them. This end has got the brush end. So obviously if you're doing brush lettering, it's going to be beautiful to write with. So there's my Albrecht Dürer one, also wet. You can see the light reflecting on there. Beautiful on the page. Very, very similar. So the Albrecht Dürer ones are really, really beautiful to work with. I've worked a lot with both of these brands, both of these types. So the FaberCastell is the brand, the Albrecht Dürer is this type of pen. And honestly, they're both stunning. So I think when you're working with these and you're wetting them, you know, it's a personal preference. I probably would go for the Albrecht Dürer ones over the Ecoline ones. I just find them more pigmented. So the Ecolines are a little bit lighter in some areas, where these ones are, you've got that amazing pigment going all the way through. In the blending, I do a color blending class. I do work with these as well. And then you can wet them. You can do all sorts of beautiful effects with them. You can also use these pens, all of these water soluble ones. You can use them on a palette. So say you have some plastic or a ceramic saucer, you can take your pen, color in a little bit, and you can use a paintbrush and pick up the ink, and you can actually paint with it. So these ones are amazing for doing art with as well. It's very versatile. So there you can see they are dry. This Albrecht Dürer one is still wet. If I go and touch that, I can see that it's wet. I don't know if you can see there. If I go and touch that now, it'll smudge. That's how long it takes to dry. They're so juicy. I'm going to just use this Tombow one by comparison, just so you can see the size difference. So for a lot of people, the Tombow is considered quite a big pen, but if you look at the stroke size, there you can see the difference. So look how thick the Ecoline and the Albrecht Dürer ones are. That Ecoline looks thicker. It is a much older pen. Okay, so my FaberCastell one is a lot newer, so it's slightly narrower. Your nibs eventually do soften up. Even if you're very careful with your pens, they do eventually get soft and go wider. But look at that Tombow by comparison. And you can see then just how big those ones are. And I would have considered, before I met these pens, before I had the pleasure of meeting them, I would have considered the Tombow to be a really, really big pen. And yet that's the biggest it'll go compared. It just depends as well on what you're wanting to do with it. If you're wanting to write quite small, or you're wanting to do envelopes and journaling and that kind of thing, these are absolutely too huge for that. So it just depends what you're wanting to do with the pens. If I go and take, just by comparison, my little Tombow pen that I was showing you earlier, you can actually see the difference, the size difference. So look how tiny that is compared to those letters. So when you talk about brush pens, you can't just say a brush pen. It's like, well, what size, what type, what brand, what ink, you know, there's a whole lot of things to consider. And then we get to the metallics. And the metallics are also just like in a league of their own. So if I look at the metallics, I've got Karen's and I've got some zebra ones over here. So the zebra ones are in a set. So I do sell those as well. And then the Karen ones are, you can buy them loose or in a set. So these are quite new. I didn't have those previously. And so far, very, very impressive. I'm just going to show you these. With the Karen markers, it says Deco Brush on here. When you, so these, there is a little ball inside. I don't know if you can hear that. It's got a small ball inside, little, probably a ball bearing, and it's paint inside here. So you shake those up, and when you write with them, they are, they give you this beautiful metallic ink. I've written on some black here. You can just see, that's how big they write. So I've written with the violet one and the blue one. They're very, very similar to these zebra ones. So if you've bought the zebra ones, the Karens are very similar. They are great to use. They also work on white. Metallic pens are going to give you a different look depending on what background you write on. So if you're writing on black, they're going to give you a different look to if you write on white, obviously, because the black ink is, the black paper is showing through the ink. And here the white paper is showing through. So I'm just going to show you with the violet one, because I did already work with that one. Oh, guys, my camera is not behaving nicely. Okay. All right. So just want to move it into the light there. Okay. So here's the violet on the black. And here I'm going to do the violet on the white paper as well. It's going to look very different when it's wet. It looks really, really juicy and amazing when it's wet. When it dries, it goes a little bit more matte. So just writing out that same word. I'll hold it up into the light now. quite big pens as well. You can see how big I'm having to make these letters. Sorry, I know it's skew on the screen. Okay, so there it is, wet on the paper. When you see people writing on Instagram, they'll have the camera sideways like this, and often they'll have this light reflecting on the letters. It looks amazing. When this ink dries, obviously it doesn't look quite as amazing because it's gone a little bit more matte. But look at the size of that, and you can see it drying there, taking its time to dry. There's a black one I wrote out before the class. So not really reflecting. It is kind of reflecting, but it's a metallic ink, but it's not, you know, the ink is limited. You've got to have it be able to come through a brush like this. So it's not like an acrylic ink that is quite thick. This is still a very, like it's quite a liquidy ink because it needs to be able to come through the brush pen. So there it is on the white. Just wait for that to dry. The Karen markers are also really big and nice to work with. So I've got ones here. Just find, this is how they come. They come in a box like that. I'm just going to write with one of the Karens just by comparison. So a normal Karen, when I say normal Karen marker, these are the Deco brush. It actually says Deco brush on there. And you can write on other surfaces as well. I haven't quite experimented with all the surfaces you can write on, but I have tried on glass and on plastic and that, and it works really, really nicely. Look at this, ink sits beautifully on there. So these are the Brush Marker Pros. So that is, if I do that, there's no ball inside. So I don't know if you heard the, I don't know if you can hear that, it's a bit light. You can hear that little ball inside and there's nothing. If I shake that, there's nothing. So I'm going to write with the, this is a turquoise one, just with a normal Karen, and I was going to write the color name, but it's so long. I'm just going to write the word blue. You can see it's a narrower nib. I'm writing the word blue because turquoise is a bit long to fit on here. Okay. Also quite wet and juicy. So like I showed you with those, the Albrecht Dürer and the Ecoline, those are very juicy pens. These Karen markers are also very, very juicy. They tend to bleed slightly on the sides, so sometimes can be a little bit annoying if you're not working on really, really good paper. They work beautifully on hot pressed watercolor paper. So if you're wanting to do artwork with markers, these pens are amazing and they blend beautifully. They're very pigmented as well. You can see here how small it is. I mean, that's not a small pen, but how small it is compared to the metallic. This metallic is still wet, eh? On this side, it's dry, but you can see the first three letters are actually still wet. It's giving a very different look on the black and on the white paper, but beautiful pens to work with. With brush pens, you can also blend the ends. You can mix the nibs together. So say you take like these two pens. So I'm just going to use the Koi ones to show you. So brush marker ink is really nice. I'm putting this aside. It's still not dry. You can see that is still wet over there. But look at those beautiful colors. And then that's the Karen one over there, the normal marker. A little bit of feathering. So it's not bleeding. It hasn't gone through the paper, but it's got a little bit of feathering. Feathering is where your ink kind of goes sideways and it just goes slightly blurry around the edges. So a little bit of that happening over there. It's not happening on the metallic inks though. Metallic pens are nice to have pens. They're not essential for you to do brush lettering. So when it comes to budget, metallic markers are kind of at the end of the spectrum. You really do need to start with these sort of pens, build up your collection, get some colors. Metallics are really fun to have, but don't try and learn with these. They're so huge and they're just going to give you anxiety if you try and write with those. You try and learn with those. Okay, so to show you how the water-soluble ink pens can blend together. This is not a blending lesson or a brush lettering lesson, but just to show you, for example, if you look at these pens, you can do all sorts of blending techniques, but you can also do cool things like this. You can color in on the end. People have a heart attack when I do this because now it's like, oh, you've ruined your pen. I haven't. I am putting water-soluble ink onto water-soluble ink. What will happen when I write with this? If I do a stripe, for instance, you're getting a blue stripe with a bit of pink. This is the pink pen. So if I keep going with this and I keep doing stripes, eventually it will go back to pink. But look at these beautiful effects. As I'm writing, I'm wiping off the blue ink. So it's a turquoise color I put on, and look how it's going through. If I keep going, it'll eventually go back to pink. You can see it's getting less and less. So these pens are very useful in that way. Just to see if the pink picked up on the blue. Sometimes it doesn't work the other way. No, the blue, the pink picks up the blues nicely. The blue doesn't pick up the pink so nicely, but you can play nicely with these pens. You can wet these stripes as well. Or okay, I've made stripes. You say you were doing artwork. You could wet these and make beautiful pictures as well. Just don't put your pen away. I'm going to do that now because I'm doing a recording, so I'll wipe it off later. But if you put that pen away now, it won't get damaged. Just you're going to pick it up later on to write, and you might forget that there's blue on there, and you go to write something and you end up with this striped letter. But look how pretty that is. So to wipe it off, you just take it on plain paper and you just wipe until you've taken all the ink off again. And it goes back to its pink. Okay, so water-soluble pens are great for that. If you've got alcohol markers, for instance, these Tombow ones that I was talking about earlier, if you've got alcohol markers, then what's going to happen with those is you will blend them without a blender pen. You would take, so say you do a stripe like this in a yellowy color, and then you take your orange over and you're wanting to blend your colors. You would take your yellow one again, your light one, and you blend that out. So you can get a beautiful blend with the alcohol markers. They work differently to water-soluble markers. They do also bleed through the paper. So these are great for artwork. They don't fade like water-soluble ones. So here I'm blending out that color, and you get a beautiful soft look like that. So you can get stunning effects using alcohol brush pens. So when I talk about brush pens, because I teach brush lettering and I work mainly with water-soluble pens, I'm not talking about the Copics and the Chameleons and all of those alcohol markers. But if you're looking at these pens, these are the Tombow ones. They have the brush end. It's very similar to the water-soluble ones. The size is pretty much the same. And it's just going to give you a totally different look. The thing about these, though, if I turn this over, it goes right through the paper. So there's where I was blending down like that. So if you're working on, this is Bristol paper, so it's a 180 gram. Even on a thicker paper, it will sometimes bleed through. But if you're doing artwork and you're taking this and sticking it onto something, or you're framing it, or you're working on a very thick card, then that doesn't matter. Then I would suggest you go with the alcohol markers, because your color blending is great. You don't get as much streaking, and your colors are a lot bolder, and they light fast, which means they won't fade like these will fade. The water-soluble ones will fade quite badly and quite quickly as well. Last one I want to show you is these are the neon ones. So not sure, look at that yellow. It's like really, it's quite hectic. It's very neon-y. These are the neon Karens. So the ones that I showed you here, that one that I wrote with is normal, like a normal marker. These are the neon ones. So I wrote this out with neons. I don't have them here with me, but they look like this. They just have different, they have the neon color lids, and you get these stunning neon effects. This is actually, it almost hurts my eyes to look at it. It's got that stunning neon effect, and it has a kind of a raised feel on the page. So these are all the colors that you get the neon ones in. These are like proper neon ones and the pink ones. So really stunning to work with. Okay, in terms of cheap pens, I would suggest that you don't buy cheap pens simply because they'll fray quickly. If you're wanting to get fairly cheap pens to practice with, a lot of people use the Crayola Super Tips. These are not brush pens. They are fat and chunky like this. Okay, so that is going to give you a sort of a brush letter effect. If I write like that, you'll say, oh, but look, it looks like a brush pen. It's very thick and chunky. It's not a flexible nib like a brush pen. It's sort of flexible, but because it's cut at this angle and you turn this pen as you write with it, you'll get a thin line, and you've got to sort of go on the side to get the thick line. So these are definitely nice to practice with. Very cheap. You can buy them in sets, I think from Take A Lot. I don't know about stationery shops, but I've seen them in big sets of like 20 to 40 colors. So Super Tips are really nice to work with and great option for practicing. but I wouldn't consider them as brush pens as such. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of what I want to show you, what we'll show you and demo for you. Any questions you have, you're welcome to message me. I'm looking at my metallic one. This violet is actually finally dry. So yeah, it's not going to really reflect like a metallic pen. What it does is it kind of has a like a purpley silvery shimmer to it, but it's not sparkly. It's not like this, if you go in the sun, it's going to sort of shine, but it's not like glitter. People get a little bit confused with metallic. It's just giving you a sort of a slight metallic look. Okay, any questions you have, you're welcome to message me, or if you want to come and try the pens, you're welcome to come and all my pens that I sell, I always suggest people try them before they buy, so you're welcome to come and try them as well. Okay, thanks guys, thanks for watching, and yeah, happy brush littering. Okay, bye.